Marc Taverner from Bitfury. Please join me.
Thank you.
We're going to do this as an interview because obviously we rang him yesterday. He flew in this morning and we're delighted that you're here with us. And in fact, I think you had a few questions for the audience. Can we maybe get those on stage? Bitfury, I immediately think of this beautiful English proverb, hell has no fury.
Hell
Than
has
a woman
no
scorned.
fury like a woman scorned.
Exactly.
Very, very
so
true.
we can sort of probably build a link after our little interview to the blockchain world. Hell has no fury than a person who's lost his Bitcoin wallet.
Unless he has a great tracking service.
Exactly. Oh, well, we're going to come to that in a minute. So let me quickly introduce Marc to you. Marc is an IT veteran. He's the global ambassador for Bitfury. And I think most of you will know the company, but if you don't, it is literally the largest company in this space that really has an all-round hardware, software solutions, help with building solutions, AML, KYC, you know, literally a full-service IT company, but for the crypto and the blockchain space. And as we're, do you own Bitcoin? So Marc, here you're getting your questions. And then we had a second question, didn't we? So if you own...
Yeah, so I'm super interested to know in the audience how many of you own Bitcoin.
Well, about half.
And it looks like we're
about
getting
half.
some of that information at the moment. So maybe if we could pause it there and then lead on from that question to see, out of those of you who do own Bitcoin, how many of you know where that Bitcoin has come from, or what the history of that Bitcoin is, or what its provenance is? If you could just give us an indication there.
Yeah, we're saturating the information.
So
we can see it
we
here
could
as
just
well.
pause it just there. So it's not uncommon, and in fact the same is true with cash. And I'll come back to talk about this in a little while, but what's really positive is that a good number of you in this room are clearly playing around with cryptocurrency. You're moving it around, putting in your wallets. I don't know if you're buying flowers for your children, for your partners, or toys as Christmas presents, but you're playing around with it, which is the most important thing. And when you're doing that, and we'll chat about this in a little while, Connie, you're leaving an audit trail. You're leaving a trail which can never be removed, and which, with the right tools, can always be linked back to you. And I want to come back to that point at the end if I can.
Yeah. So let's immediately dive into a few of the projects. And I already made the point when we did the introduction that it's such a shame that everything around blockchain and Bitcoin is now about valuation and not so much about the end result and the fairness and transparency. But you have a great case where in the Republic of Georgia, you're taking care of land registration, which not only helps the citizens, but also put Georgia, you know, on a better pedestal in the international community. Tell us about that project, please.
So the history to this is that Hernando de Soto, who's a world-famous economist, set us a challenge as Bitfury. And he said, from your privileged position where over 8 years of operation, you've been very successful in Bitcoin mining and transaction processing, you've learned a lot, isn't it time to do something good? So I've got a project for you, Bitfury, he said. There are approximately, or let's look at it a different way. Believe it or not, only 1 in 3 people in the entire world have the ability to prove that they own their most valuable asset, which is oftentimes their land or their house. Only 1 in 3 people around the world.
Wow.
So he set us a challenge and said, if you really want to do something good, find a whole country that will come with you on a journey and prove that blockchain can either supplement or add value to land registry and empower citizens to have an indelible record, which can't be taken away from them and can't be changed, that proves that they own their land. So in the Republic of Georgia, we set about this project, and we were very lucky to find the governments in the Republic of Georgia supportive of the idea, and I'll come back to, I think, why they were supportive of it, to current day where we've now got a blockchain solution that is covering up to 60% of the land in that country of 4.3 million people. So what that means is those citizens who previously, if you know the history of the Republic of Georgia, which has kind of swung this way and that way dependent on what the political situation was, they now have these records which they can prove to the international community demonstrate ownership of their asset, which is their most valuable asset oftentimes, which is their land.
Yeah.
And that's given trust back to the individuals in the system. It's created transparency in the process for the government, and it's allowed the government to demonstrate to the international community that it's very serious about putting the citizen at the center of its policies and of its systems, and empowering those citizens with tools which can hold the government to a certain extent to account.
Yeah, and so the real benefit, as always, must be in either, you know, the scarce resources, money and time.
You know, I think the real benefit is kind of in that, yes. So the Republic of Georgia governments estimate that they reduce their costs in this particular business process by some 90%, and also that the process, which previously would take 3 days of registering a piece of land, now only takes approximately 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go to the next case that I thought was quite amusing. You will know that in the Netherlands a few years ago we started by sort of, if we convict criminals, we take their assets away from them. Asset stripping is way more painful often than being in jail, because, you know, if you're in jail but your wife's still driving around in a Porsche, you know, it's not a good sign to society. So tell us a little bit about Ukraine.
We're doing a lot of work in the Ukraine, actually. The government's got a very comprehensive blockchain strategy. And they're rolling that across all areas. But the one particular use case I wanted to bring today and talk to you about is really quite interesting, e-auctions. So when property is seized by the government and they go to dispose of it, the chosen method in Ukraine is through an auction service. Now that's okay if it's a pair of Nike trainers or if it's a rather old bicycle. But when you start to get to Rolex watches or very nice motorbikes or dare say cars, things of real value and appeal, there's a temptation amongst some of the officials who are involved in this process, much like any of us that have bought anything on eBay. If we can hold that bid low and not be exposed to market forces and get something at a slightly lower price than we thought, we're very happy. Well, you know, most of the people that work in these services are just like you and I. And therefore, if there is a way which they could suppress the price slightly or help one of their friends acquire this very interesting asset, then human nature dictates that that might happen sometimes. So what we've done with the e-auction service is we've added a blockchain element to it, which doesn't stop human nature. But what it does is it acts as a really good deterrent, because now there is a perfect audit trail of everything to do with that auction, including who the individuals are. So if anybody is tempted, there's a big warning sign within the administration of this system that say, if you do something wrong and you're tempted like this, please don't, because we will find you. We will understand what's happened and we'll be able to write that process again. We'll just seize the asset back from you and you will end up in jail. Yeah. So as a deterrent, again, it's provided that visibility, and whilst it won't stop human nature, as I said, it's a very, very strong way of deterring people.
Yeah, good. One final case which really jumped to my heart as well. We all know that there are plenty of migrant workers around the world, and they often work, knowingly or unknowingly, for hugely big brands. And the big brands in the fashion industry, for instance, have a lot of trouble in saying, you know, you are buying these trousers, Connie, but they were really made by women who work in good conditions, or men, whatever. Very hard to do. And you worked with Coca-Cola. Tell us about that case.
Coca-Cola and the US State Department. So this is to try and get around the issue of migrant workers being mistreated in the supply chain. For those of you that might know Coca-Cola, they have their name over the entire supply chain, whether the bottling plant is controlled by them or not. Oftentimes it's not. And they wanted to find a system that would allow these migrant workers, or workers of all denomination actually, to be able to uphold their rights, to know that their contracts of employment had not been changed, no matter how menial their task was or how low their salary was, and therefore how small their voice might be. So we've been working with Coca-Cola and the US State Department to create a system on the blockchain. It's a project that we've just recently started, which again will allow that worker to have a copy of their contract, a verifiable copy of their contract, that they know they can turn to if they feel they're not being treated in the right way.
Yeah, and so really they will find then, we're going back to the human world, they will find Coca-Cola behind them, because I can just imagine if you've traveled from Pakistan, whatever, to Dubai to work there, and you know you're sitting there on your own, and you know the guy says no, things are different here, give me your passport. What will Coca-Cola then do? They will step in.
Yeah, so let's be very clear about this. This is a project which is being driven by Coca-Cola and the US State Department to solve a problem that they see, which is not of their making, but they want to solve.
Okay. Before we go to my final questions, 2 questions from the audience. Did you cooperate with the land registry in Georgia, and are they considering transfer of deeds?
Transfer of deeds, yes. Back to the point that was made earlier with Blockchain Baby. There are huge legal considerations in all of that. So that is a stage which will come later. And did we cooperate? Absolutely. Not only did we cooperate with them, but we formed a partnership. And there's no other way that you can deploy blockchain.
Okay. And next question was, is the Georgia case a public or a private ledger?
Great question.
And who's running it?
So we built that on the Bitcoin blockchain to start with when we first began the project at the request of the Republic of Georgia, because they understood that the Bitcoin blockchain is the most secure. But then the economics and the speed and the capability of that chain to scale led us to convince the Georgian government to move to a private permission blockchain, which they now run and own. And they have nodes in independent third parties around the world that verify how this system is working and attest to the truthfulness of the system. Plus, we take a system state view of that private permission blockchain, and we anchor it into the Bitcoin blockchain with a traffic light system that says, are the rules being adhered to, yes or no?
Yeah. Now, we know that KYC track and trace are one of the most difficult things in all this whole blockchain thing. Are you building any, I appreciate that you're building projects, you're doing stuff on the blockchain, but are there any particular solutions that you have built that are really available for everybody and to use on any type of blockchain product, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, we talk about this a little quietly because with our heritage as Bitcoin miners, which is where we started out, we mine up to 15%
quietly again
of the global Bitcoin blockchain. We've created a tool called Crystal Blockchain, which lets you look into the Bitcoin transactions, see the history of them, and see if they've been associated with any illegal activity. And that tool also allows you to understand the risk score of doing business with an individual, a wallet, an exchange, or an organization. And the reason we talk about this a little quietly is you can imagine that the Bitcoin community has suggested that we're doing something which is not entirely in keeping with the purpose of the Bitcoin community. But what we say to those people is, if you don't do something bad with Bitcoin, you've got no reason to be upset with this.
Good. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for jumping on the plane and coming and telling us 3 business cases in 10 minutes. Thanks.
So
much.
Thank
See you later.
Thank you, everybody.